Welcome to the Business of Tattooing, the podcast that goes beyond the ink to dive deep into the industry, the hustle, and what it really takes to succeed in the world of tattooing. I'm Rob Smead, founder of Electrum Supply, and your guide through the business side of this ever-evolving art form. Each week, we'll break down the latest trends, tackle the challenges artists face, and sit down with industry pros to talk shop, unfiltered and straight to the point. Whether you're an artist, a shop owner, or just someone who loves the craft, this is the podcast built for you. So, sharpen your skills, level up your business, and let's get to work. This is the Business of Tattooing.
Kudos to you for putting together like a top-notch show. I hear it in the ad reads, I hear it in the promo, I hear it, in the clips. Great job, man. I mean, it's a big undertaking these days, especially with video, and so shout out to you, man. I love it.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. I don't know if you know, but I had a podcast before COVID that was just Electrum Radio, and basically I just carried my Roadcaster Pro to tattoo shows, and we'd set up behind the booth and just bring artists in and just shoot the shit with them. It was a pretty fun podcast, but when COVID came around, it kind of shut down conventions and traveling, and then the podcast just kind of died. And so I was always itching to get another podcast going, and I was struggling for a long time with just what kind of format I wanted to do, because I really wanted to focus on something that was more impactful for the industry, and just kind of like, just real talk shit, you know what I mean? And not any of the fluff and shit which I think there's a lot of that out there. There are a lot of good tattoo podcasts out there now, I feel like.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I love that format that you're talking about before. Like when back in 2012, I started the first tattoo podcast, and my first shows were obviously over Zoom, over audio recording. And then I did connect with the Sullen guys, and I went down and I did live, at the show recordings for my first show, I think was on the Queen Mary in Long Beach. And we had a big Sullen booth and had one part of it set up, and we were doing interviews, and then I did it with Muse Inc. And what a cool vibe that is. I mean, it's super fun. You get that in-person connectivity, and it's different. But being able to do it like this with, the technology that we have available, you can still create some of that energy, and it's amazing, man. I love the conversations. I love the interaction, the ability for us to connect, in tattooing. It's why I started that podcast in the first place. I looked at outside the industry and I said, okay, I'm listening to podcasts driving to my shop for an hour every day. I'm listening to comedians tell funny stories, have good conversations, and then tell people where they're going to on the weekend. And I was like, I can do that with a podcast of my own. And I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. So, end of 2012, I kicked it off, and, it snowballed, from there. And fortunately, Rob, I had some great opportunities to have some really good guests on right away. Jojo Ackerman, I will always shout that guy out when I'm talking about it, because he lended a lot of credibility to what I was doing, because most people didn't even at that time know about podcasting. They didn't know what it was. Right. And so to have a guy of his caliber come on, tell his stories, and the show was called the Joe Swanson Propaganda Podcast. I wanted to propagate positivity and, these stories that were being told in tattooing out into the client's ears and the world. And so, man, it's amazing. Again, I love what you're doing. I love that there's hundreds of podcasts now that people can dive into and listen to and get educated and, stoke that fire of interest in tattooing. It's amazing these days.
Yeah, dude. I just have fun with it. I really enjoy podcasts. So, I like to, I just having fun, man. That's all it's really about. Well, let me see if I can give you a somewhat proper introduction. I've done a little bit of homework, and I don't know how much of this is accurate. I got some stuff off of LinkedIn and different sources, but the show today is Joe Swanson. So if I got this right, you started tattooing in 96?
Yep.
Monterey,
Yep.
California, correct?
Monterey, 6 blocks from the Defense Language Institute. Our military payday was our payday, baby.
All right, sweet. Also, you already mentioned you've been involved in some podcasts. I think you mentioned Soul Radio, but you also did Art Right Now. Is that another podcast that you did?
Yeah, I've done about 3 or 4 podcasts over the course of time since starting that first tattoo podcast in 2012. That did lead to me collaborating and looking, with Sullen. I was looking for a bigger platform. How do I get this out to more people? Those guys were, shout out Jeremy and Ryan. Love those guys. I'm actually going over to HQ this week, and we're re-releasing. Here's an exclusive. We're re-releasing all of the Sullen Radio episodes onto YouTube coming up shortly. Probably going to kick that off with the Jack Rudy episode. Rest in peace, Jack. And so people will have those available with easier access coming up. So yeah, I've done a bunch of podcasting and kicked that whole thing off in 2012.
Yeah, that's super cool, dude. I definitely want to get some more into that on the conversation today. Also, Art Right Now. So that's it. What I got from that was an initiative that used tattoo culture as a platform for experiential learning through human development through workshops and art journaling sessions. Is that?
Yeah. I was, so at that time, I wanted to start another podcast. I kind of shut down the other podcasts. I was, tattooing privately, working for a company out of the Bay Area as well. And I had a buddy, Isaac, who was a producer. He's like, hey, let's kick something off. So I came up with Art Right Now. I have always said that if people do better art, they're going to do better tattooing. And so I've always advocated for that. And so, yeah, Art Right Now was a podcast that was me just riffing on art, topics and concepts mixed in with tattooing. And what I was doing at that time was some education on art journaling for wellness, both in schools and then at corporate events. So as an example, I went out to Credit Karma in San Francisco and did a whole seminar for them about art journaling. And, so that was kind of some of the education stuff that I was doing at that time. And it was a way for me to talk about tattooing, talk about that education, talk about art. And, subsequently, I shut that one down as I became an art teacher. I went through an accrediting program with the state of California and became a elementary school art teacher for a few years. And so, yeah, it was an amazing time. Shout out my incredible principal, Alicia, who taught me a lot about leadership. She taught me a lot about communication and how to present art and information in a very clear and usable way.
Yeah, that's super cool, man. I really get inspired and energized by tattoo artists specifically that utilize their artistic abilities to venture out into the community and just bring art awareness to the community. I think that's an amazing thing, and I really wish more people would do that. So kudos to you for that. That's super cool.
Thanks, man. I mean, that started. I've been a lifelong learner, dude. Like, I love education. I love increasing my knowledge. And it's what pushed me to create my first educational, at the time DVDs, but educational courses in 2009 and 10 on how to paint tattoo flash. Got a lot of shit for that. I heard you talking on your podcast about like putting yourself out there in certain ways and getting a lot of negative feedback about it.
Yeah.
That happened with me in 2009. I could bring up some old Facebook messages from guys we know and the people listening to this podcast know and respect and love, telling me that, they hope I die and blah, 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 because I was educating people on how to, these trade secrets, on how to paint tattoo flash. And again, my second DVD was tattoo style drawing, just like, how to properly draw a basketball rose, how to properly lay out flames, water, some of these classic, aspects and images within tattooing that, again, if you can, God, it frustrated me so much to see some like shitty waves. And like, if this person just knew a little bit more, these waves would be so much better. And this tattoo would be 100 times better. And the client would be able to be that much more proud of it. Yeah. And that was my concept. I was like, all right, I want to teach this art so that people can take it into their tattooing and get better. Elevate this, this industry, this thing that we're doing that has given me so much, dude.
Well, that's what it's about. That key word is elevate, right? And I think as risky it is to put yourself out there like that, I feel like if you're truly, and I get it, I understand where the animosity for some of that comes from. I mean, I'm an old school guy too, so I mean, I get it. I understand both sides. I'm just a little bit fortunate in my, since I've really gotten into the business side of tattooing and product development and manufacturing, it's really opened my eyes to a whole different side of tattooing, that most artists maybe necessarily aren't really thinking about or even aware of,
Yeah.
And you really see the gaps in the industry and the holes that need to be filled in an effort to really protect our craft and make sure that we have a long-term sustainable career path here, because every year that goes by, it's getting tighter and tighter with government regulations and oversight, and it's like, we got to figure out as artists, and especially the old guys in the industry. I mean, the ones that laid the foundation in the industry really need to be the ones that help set the path forward for education in the industry. It shouldn't be these people that have no tattoo experience setting up tattoo schools and teaching people and charging people in the industry money for that when they don't need. I mean, fuck, dude, you got apprentices teaching apprentices. I mean, that's crazy, right? Like,
yeah. How long has that been? That's been going on since before the internet too. I remember when I apprenticed in August of '96. And my mentor, who I'm still good friends with, Steve Hendricks, he had owned shops in Subic Bay, Philippines, and Hawaii, and then in Monterey. And I remember a girl that was, working at the art store. She was apprenticing as well. We both did one tattoo, and I carried on my path in that shop. And she took off and started, she had gotten just enough information to go to her house and start, the kitchen magician, right? Start doing that. And so I feel like it's always gone on. And to your point, Rob, like, those of us who've stayed the course can be the leaders in this industry and show the way that now we have to stay open to new ideas and innovation and look outside our industry as well to keep elevating. But we can show that like standard that should be done, right? I truly believe that.
Yeah, I agree, and I think another thing that's kind of shunned upon, but like you said, you have to be open to new ideas. I think another thing, kudos to guys like Sean Brown over at Eternal, because this guy's going up to Capitol Hill and going to these meetings filled with suits and ties and people that are really staunch advocates against tattooing in a lot of cases, Sean's going to these political motivated meetings and attempting to be a voice for the tattoo industry and make sure that we have a voice in these room full of people that I'm sure he's not comfortable in. I mean, he probably sticks out like a sore thumb there, and he's trying to rub elbows with these politicians and lobbyists, and make sure we need more of that. You know what I mean? We've got to have more of a voice like that. It can't just be one guy out there fighting that battle. You know, it's like,
Right.
we've got to bridge that gap between the tattoo culture and the mainstream culture,
Yeah.
you know, which is why, again, kudos to you for doing what you're doing with your artistic, uh, you know, things and teaching school and like just trying to reach out with your artistic teaching into the local communities and bringing some cohesiveness to those two worlds. You know, I think that's a huge step in the right direction.
I appreciate that, man. You know, again, it was like, yeah, bridging that gap between, you know, what somebody who's a potential client of tattooing knows about tattooing and what we as artists know about it. You know, there's a lot of room there to fill in those holes for that experience when they ultimately get tattooed to be the best experience, you know. And I mean, to be quite honest, like that stuff that I did, the educational courses that I created, the seminars I did for corporate events, the teaching as a you know elementary school art teacher, it all informed now what I do with, you know, you just had Mikey Getz on. I'm one of the mentors in Force of Focus. And, you know, it all informs what I'm doing there, you know, plus my business experience outside of tattooing, inside of tattooing. I bring, you know, all of that wisdom of experience into that educational platform where we can share as you know leaders in this industry with people that are trying to elevate, trying to get better at what they're doing, putting systems in their business so that they can stay focused on the art. As my friend Matt Hodel says, stay in the flow state of tattooing, you know,
Right,
not in the admin like weeds
right,
of,
right.
you know, where I've definitely been. I definitely was in those admin weeds when I ran my own shop and, you know, would have loved some of the systems that we teach in Force of Focus that I advocate for as, you know, currently working as head of growth for Tattoo Pro, the number one tattoo shop software. You know, like we have systems in place now that people can use in their businesses that will allow them to flourish as artists, and businessmen and women.
So Tattoo Pro is something that's currently in your world today. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah,
Where did
100%.
that originate, and what was the motivation behind that?
Yeah. So, two big things in my world, right? Besides family and, you know, family and my friends. I have a great Buddhist community that I'm connected with. But outside of that, for work, it is Force of Focus, which includes private tattooing and still working actively in the industry. And then head of growth for Tattoo Pro. And those came together through my research for one of my, you know, weekly calls that we do. We do 4 calls throughout the week with Force of Focus. Mine is the Compass call. It's all about business systems, infrastructure, innovation, and forward thinking in the industry. And I was looking for a solution. Mikey and I were thinking about putting together a CRM or some solution for artists to utilize to keep track of some of these things. And I came across Tattoo Pro. Said to Mikey, "Hey, man, we gotta talk to these guys and see if it's you know something that we could present um, to our students." And that led to a conversation with the CEO Sylvan and a couple other conversations with you know they have a big uh, a board. They have, you know, a dedicated development team, a go-to-market advisor. It led to some conversations with those people and their heart for small business, their desire to serve this industry in a really powerful way was very apparent. And it aligned so much with mine that they ended up offering me a position as head of growth. And so we're a startup, been around 4 years, been truly focused on the tattoo industry for the last couple years, and putting together some really powerful tools that will help tattoo shops from hello to, past heal, right? So from lead capture all the way through tools to organize, to optimize your business. And so, yeah, that's what I do. It's what I'm doing down here in Southern California, little West Coast shop tour. And, it's all about awareness and education. So I've been walking into shops in Sacramento, San Francisco, down here in Southern California now. We'll be doing many more conventions. Just got back from the New England Tattoo Expo, which, shout out Tommy, put on a great show, and people were working, people were excited. Clients were up on stage showing off work that was just phenomenal. And so, yeah, man, I'm so excited to be a part of this team, with Tattoo Pro. I think it's something that I speak with conviction of, because I would have loved this solution. When I owned my own shop, I put together this beautiful shop, pink walls, just like your shirt, man, beautiful, right? Great area, great, stations for the artists. And it was a place that I loved going when I first opened it up. And it became a burden over the course of a few years, because I knew I was walking into a stack of consent forms that, I needed to deal with in some way. I needed to go to do that Costco run. I knew I had one artist tripping in my ear about getting his commission payout. I knew I needed to follow up with my clients in some way to get them to come back in the shop or run an event. I mean, it was just in the weeds on that bullshit that is the business, the business of tattooing, which is why I love what you're doing, man, because you're talking about these things and you're educating people, having those conversations and airing that stuff out. I would have loved a solution like Tattoo Pro to be able to keep me in that flow state of tattooing and out of the admin weeds.
Yeah, I get it. So you said from hello to post heal, Tattoo Pro does everything and all that. So talk a little bit about that. If I'm a tattoo artist and I am using that platform, what does that do for me? How much does that automate my process and allow me to just focus on the art?
Yeah, absolutely. So all the way from, most artists are either posting a link on their social media to a website or a hosted page that has an interest form. And the client now who's out there in the space, Google searching tattoo shop near me 23,000 times a day, is going to come up with that link, or they find you on Instagram, fill out that, consultation interest form. When they do that, it immediately drops into an opportunities area inside the software. So your team or you as an artist can look at that, look at the form, immediately start communicating with them in a centralized location. So you're not in the DMs and Messenger and text and email. It's all right there for you. If you have a staff of artists, you can assign that interest or opportunity to one of those. It'll pop up right on their mobile phone for them. So again, they're not in an email. They're right in a central location that they can see those opportunities, begin to communicate, easily send out a booking link, get them on a calendar. The shop has the opportunity to have some oversight on what's happening. So if they need to jump in and help that artist who's busy with something else, they can take over communication. They can help with booking, automated, reminders for the appointment, which is going to reduce that no-show and really cultivate an experience of a higher value client, because that client's going to understand the importance of that meeting, right? And so, yeah, really from first point of contact, and we know how critical this is, speed to lead. This is a business thing, right? Speed to lead is so crucial, and so much more now, because if you don't get back to that client, where are they going? To one of the other 6 shops on the same freaking block that you're on. And so speed to lead is super crucial. It helps with that. Another exclusive here, we just started our biggest development push yet to implement AI into the software. Meaning, soon as that lead comes in your own voice, customizable to you, you can set it up to immediately within seconds respond to that lead. Start cultivating that relationship until your staff or you as an artist can get back to them and begin that human to human connection. And so this is, again, one of these big advancements that we see where it's going in the industry, and what's super crucial to help an artist, again, stay in the flow of tattooing and not just, in this, doldrum of like text responses and DM responses. So absolutely, man, it's powerful stuff. And I liken it to the waterfall moment. We're at a waterfall moment right now in tattooing. I truly believe that shops are going to have to get onto a solution like this. There are plenty of them out there. I've talked to, dozens of shops on this West Coast tour, and most of them that are forward thinking are trying to piece these solutions together, right? They're using this for the consent forms. They're using this for scheduling. They're using this for a follow-up. Well, you got it now all in one place. And just like we saw from, some early adopters like myself and some other friends were using iPads in 2010 and 11, and around by 2013, waterfall moment. Everybody was on iPads, right? And if you weren't on iPads by 2014, 15, you were getting left behind.
Right.
Definitely, we are at another waterfall moment when it comes to technology in tattooing today, with optimizing what your shop is doing, providing the most incredible customer experience by using technology. And I say it, keep the craft traditional and technology in your business to optimize it.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that waterfall moment analogy. That's really really true. I feel like we're at a lot of those actually in the industry. It kind of and doing a podcast today is easy, where if you want to talk about the business of tattooing, because there's tons of waterfall moments in regards to so many different things. I just
Right.
Social media has definitely been a waterfall moment in tattooing itself. So
Yeah.
it's completely opened the floodgates in the tattoo industry to so many different things, and
Yeah.
in regards to your accessibility to clients and other artists, and the ability to geez, I think back, 20, 30 years ago, even just the ability to solicit a new client today is so much easier than it was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
You had to try to get yourself in a tattoo magazine to get your tattoo seen across the world. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it was the
Yeah.
only way,
It was the only way. And then you had to open your doors at noon to 8, to get people to come in. And you had to advocate at the local restaurants and at the local bars. And you had to like have business cards in your pocket. And it became this time where, and now we see it, where you can showcase yourself across the world. And, but I think there's a little bit of people get caught up in that. And, I say it, I've said it before also, like, tattooers, what are we? We're lurkers. We love to lurk on other people's like stuff. And so what has happened, I think, a lot in tattooing is, and this is some of the stuff that we talk about and we teach in Force of Focus, is that tattooers end up pandering to tattooers. They end up posting for other tattooers to look at and trying to seek that validation from their peers. When in reality, if you want to boost your business, if you want to double your book of business, you have to pander to the client and that client experience. Look, the foundation has been laid. Everybody can do a good tattoo. Everybody's clean. And, these are the standards these days. That's not going to get you the work anymore. You have to create this experience for the client that is something that they can connect with. Why should they come to you as a tattooer and not this guy 2 doors down? And there's ways to do that. There's ways to use social media in an exciting way and tell stories. And share who you are outside of tattooing, that will cultivate that. And I think that's a big shift. Like, again, if we're talking about these waterfall moments, it's like there's this moment right now in social media where people are realizing that, oh, I can't just show a cool panther anymore to get another client. I have to tell the story about why that person wanted this panther and what I did to visually tell that story and what experience they had when they came in and got work from me, so that it starts to fuel this excitement that somebody says, oh shit, I love that panther. I love how it looks. I want to get an eagle, or I want to get a daisy, whatever it is, and I'm going to come to that person because I want that experience of like connecting with them. Something resonates with me about that. And it's what we're seeing more and more artists cultivating. And we just did this webinar yesterday, and Mikey was spitting free game, and I'll give it to people here too. When you do a post with a client, invite them as a collaborator on that post. What does that do? One, it makes them feel like they're the star of the show, and which they should be. And it also showcases that work out to their audience. This is another standard business thing, other people's audience. Why do businesses do brand ambassadors and these things? To cultivate other people's audience. So invite them as a collaborator, so it not only shows up on your feed, but it shows up on somebody else's feed. And Mikey might have even said that in the podcast with you the other day, but this is a huge way to get seen by people that are by clients. I think he did. I was listening to this on the way down, and he was talking about that, like where, your favorite clients, invite them as a collaborator, because what is it going to do? It's going to cultivate those same kind of favorite clients. And so, dude, I hope more tattooers start doing this for sure.
That's a little golden nugget. I mean, because think about it. If you're not doing that, then what are you doing? You're like, oh, I'm gonna tag them in my post, and I hope they share my post with their audience, right? Now that you can collaborate, it's just an automatic thing. They just hit accept, and it's out in front of their whole audience. And most of the time, their friends are like, oh, who did that tattoo? And I've asked people, I see people's tattoos sometimes, and I'm like, oh, who did that piece? And they're like, oh, I can't remember his name. It was on a trip that I went to, 2 months ago, and I'm not sure what the name of the shop is. They forgot or whatever, And it's like,
right, classic. It's classic.
Problem solved.
Problem solved, man. And there's a lot of these little things that you can do to really create that situation where, again, the client is stoked on it. They remember you. They want to share it. They want to talk about it. People are marking these moments. And, look, I said this the other day. I made a post that got some heat because I said that these days, the tattooers, the big shift is the tattooers. And I think this is where a lot of the frustration maybe is coming out from tattooers, is they're not the star of the show anymore. They used to be the star of the show. Right. And I've always thought that the star of the show, because I was raised right in tattooing by my mentor who believed this as well, and transferred this to me, this ethos of thinking that the client is the most important aspect. What are we doing? If we don't have a client, what are we tattooing? Silicone skin now? That's it. So the client is the star of the show. How do you cultivate that? By giving them a great experience. And I think the more we start to think about that as tattooers, the more we keep that top of mind. What am I doing for the client? Just like any business, the better we're going to cultivate that professional, capable client list of, people that are going to keep coming back to us.
Well, that's exactly it. I think in any business, not just tattooing, any successful business marks one of their true measures of success is lifetime value of the client. It's not just oh,
Yeah.
how many people can I get in one time and be done with them? As a tattoo artist, I want my client to let me tattoo their whole entire body if I can. You know what I mean? I want them
Yeah.
to keep coming back to me for, oh, I got to get something else. Let's do this whole sleeve. Okay, now I
Yeah.
want to get my back done. And I've got you want clients like that you want,
Yeah.
that you just want to keep building their whole collection with, So I think you're right
Yeah.
on the money with that. You're
And
completely
here's
right.
another thing, like, again, one of the things that I believe that a technology like Tattoo Pro can help you with is that follow up. Every tattooer, every tattoo that's done, they have a reason to reach out to that client for a minimum of 14 days while that thing's healing, right? So you can reach out, again, use automation. Don't get in the weeds on texting all of these clients, especially at scale. You can't do it, but you can reach out to them in a text, in an email, however you want to set that up, and say, hey, it's been 2 days. How's it going? Hey, it's been 4 days. Why don't you come in and let me take a look at it? What am I doing? I am interested in that person and cultivating this experience past the tattoo, but I'm good at belly to belly sales. Somebody's in the shop. What am I going to do? I'm going to sell them on the next tattoo, right? They're excited about it. They feel cared for. What's your next idea? This one's looking great. Like, what's next? I'm going to assume that they're going to get more tattoos. And when they're there in front of me, I'm going to help them to that next decision. So use technology to cultivate these things. Use technology to reach out and continue that. That's why I say it's like hello to post heal, because you're continuing to build that. And I've done that with people in an analog way, and it's not only got them back in the chair, but it got their son in the chair and it got their dad in the chair. And then all of a sudden I was tattooing 3 generations of people on the same day having a great time.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like, on the episode that I had with Mikey last week, he did focus a lot on the client experience. And I thought that was a really good conversation that we had. I mean, he already put it out there, so I don't feel like I'm stealing any thunder from him if I repeat it now. But I thought it was really cool that he had this idea to start doing a podcast with his clients while they're in the chair. I thought, man,
Yes.
that's cool. No, I've never really ever heard anybody go at it from that angle. And I like that idea because, I mean, I like watching like Soft White Underbelly or like,
Yep.
I just like hearing people's stories. I think people are super interesting, like you said, outside of tattooing, what's your life like outside of it? What are you into? Are you, maybe they've got some crazy wild stories, and most people do, you know what I mean? So it's like, I want to
Yeah.
hear that. I wanted to start a podcast a long time ago where I just parked up next to homeless people on the street and just what got you here kind of a story. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Where'd you
And now
come
you
from?
have, like, now there's those podcasts are out there. Those Instagram channels and TikTok channels from the streets, whatever, they're out there and they're successful, you
Because they're
know?
interesting and they're real.
Absolutely. And this is, that idea that Mikey was talking about. This is something we were talking about to our Force of Focus members like months ago, advocating for them to do it. Because, like Mikey said, he goes, 100 of you could go do this. 100 of you tattooers out there, they're hearing me say this right now, and now heard Rob repeat it, and you're hearing it from me. Go do it, because your audience is going to resonate with it. You're going to be able to draw people in, and it does not in any way, shape, or form negatively impact if Mikey does it or if I do it, and you can do that. You can take that idea, that innovative thinking that we've been advocating for months about, trying to, getting our members in Force of Focus to go and do this, right? And you see some of those posts. You can do it in many different ways. Doesn't even have to be long form. Post up a microphone, do a reel about it, do a story post about it, make a quote. Like, this is another thing that we talk about. Like, people love quotes, Rob. Like, they love these like quotes from all these like historic people. put a quote from your client. How many cool quotes have we heard as tattooers sitting across from somebody that telling their story, and they say something that's just like, whoa, that's interesting, or that's
Yeah.
incredibly funny, or whatever. Well, put that on the post, share that. That's like a very minuscule way of doing the same idea. It's telling the story, letting someone else tell the story of this experience that you're helping provide. So I love it, man. This is why, I love these conversations, because they cultivate this innovative thinking, and hopefully it inspires somebody to go out and do it. And tag me in it, please. Official Joe Swanson _FOF. Tag me in it. I want to hear it. I'm interested in it.
Yeah. I love it, dude. Have you ever read How to Win Friends and Influence People? Have you read that book?
Yes, I actually just ordered that book for everybody at Tattoo Pro, and we're going to do a roundtable on it. I read it almost like every year.
Super powerful book, but it goes right in line with what you're talking about right now. It's just it's basically setting your own ego aside and finding genuine interest in other people and making that connection with them through that channel. And I love it. It's one of the best books I've ever read myself. So
it's fascinating that it's fascinating that it's so old too, right? And it still like hits today. It's like from the 40s or something, Carnegie wrote that, and it hits in 2025.
Yeah. Also interesting, couple things I wanted to ask you about. AI, you touched on AI a little bit and how you're integrating AI into a Tattoo Pro. Not just from a tattoo perspective, but from an overall art perspective. How do you feel about the advancement of AI? How do you feel about people utilizing AI to create artistic renditions of things, tattoo designs? How does that resonate with you in your personal belief system, and how do you feel about it?
Yeah, well, I will just preface this statement with that I have an incredibly youthful enthusiasm about where tattooing is and what's happening, and it bleeds out into AI. Meaning, I love using AI, and I've been using it for the last year, 18 months, maybe about 24 months, as a thought partner in all aspects of my life, in business, personal. I'm learning Russian because my wife is Russian, so I'm learning Russian as well, and I use it in all aspects. So to use it in tattooing or in art, I'm all for it. Now this is I also take a little bit of a traditional mindset on. I might use it as a thought partner, as a visual partner to cultivate some ideas. And then I'm going to use my own artistic ability to put my spin on it. Perfect. I love it. Okay, I need please create me. The prompt is everything. Acting as an illustrator with 20 plus years of experience as a tattooer, please, provide me with a black and gray rendition of, in an illustrative style of a knight holding on one knee, holding a sword with flames behind them, and see what it comes up with. Now, I'm going to take those probably prompts, post that, and then I'm going to use that image, and I'm going to drop it into the iPad. How often do we use other reference material on the side in another layer on our iPad as we're drawing, whether it's a traditional piece or a realistic piece? We're using these references. Art has been done this way for centuries. And so we just have another tool to optimize that process. I love it, dude. Let me ask you, how do you think about it?
Same. Same thing. I use it every day as a thought partner. I feel like it's really, from a workflow standpoint, it's really allowed me to get a lot more work done in a day. because I have a ton of ideas, you know what I mean? And I mean, my mind's like a tornado up here, you know, it's just like alphabet soup, you know what I mean? It's like looking in a bowl of alphabet soup, nothing makes sense, you know what I mean?
Yep.
I don't always know how to structure all my ideas in a way that makes sense to everybody else, you know?
Yeah.
So I like AI because I can go in there and dump all my ideas into the think tank. And then it basically just says, oh, yeah, I get what you're saying. Let me organize this for you in a way that's easy to understand. Boom, it spits it out in like 10 seconds. And I'm like, fuck, that's great. I also use it for things like I'm not always the most professional or tactful person sometimes in my communication, especially if I'm frustrated about something in a business deal. So sometimes I'll dump that into there and I'll say, hey, polish this email up for me, make sure, take the emotion out of this and just make it sound professional. You know what I mean? And that's great for that. As far as for art, I love it. I agree with you. I mean, I think you're right. We've been taking reference images for a long, long time, layering them on top of each other, erasing things, meshing things together. I love AI that it streamlines that process for you, you know? I like
Yep.
to use it a lot for fun stuff too, you know? The one thing I struggle with a little bit about it is like, I don't know, art is so subjective, it's hard to be an art snob.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I feel like I'm an art snob. I'm like, especially when you see people like just generating AI images and slapping them on t-shirts or coffee cups and then selling them. Like, I think that's like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but look, like again, this is like what we've seen, you know, in other places. There's always been these royalty free images. I mean, look at the old Crap Hound. You want some cool books? Go get the Crap Hound magazines. These are all royalty free images, and people have been slapping those on mugs and shirts and different things for years. And we have that sort of, and then Pinterest came along, and people could just rip stuff off of there and slap it on, and people will do that on a mug. They'll do that on an arm, like it's just going to happen. And so again, as leaders, like you and I, and the other people that are, you know, advocating for a more thoughtful, intentional way of, you know, conducting business, we are going to not do that. And we're going to showcase what we can do with our artistic talent. And yeah, I'm all for grabbing, you know, a couple $1,000,000 off of Pinterest or having AI generate them to get my brain going. But I'm going to make it my own. And so I think that is like, I don't know. I try not to feed into the drama and let my energy is super important to me. And I've been in a place where I've just like ruminated on those people that are doing this or that, and it wasn't in line with what I would do, and it's just sucked up my energy. And
yeah,
so I try to not let myself get pulled into that area of the drama of the energy suck, you know?
yeah. I wouldn't say I care about it that much. I would just say that like I've been an artist my whole life, you know? Even before tattooing, you know what I mean? I was into commercial art, advertising, print advertising, airbrush, oil canvas, acrylics, charcoal, pencil, marker, ink pen. I've done all of it. You know what I mean? I'm very, very tied to art. And you know, one of my favorite things to do still today is to go to art museums and just look at classic art. I
Yeah.
love it. You know, I love that stuff. I, I, I only care about it in the regard that I'm like, man, this just takes so much away from like real art. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, I guess I'm more worried that as society progresses, we start losing touch more with classic art and art styles
Mhm.
and things. And that art, again, I don't know that I necessarily consider AI an art form. I don't know where that falls. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
But I guess I'm just more worried that kind of starts becoming the normal thing. You know what I mean? And it's like, it makes people lazy, and it makes people not really interested in those classic art forms anymore, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I would tend to agree a little bit with that, as far as like what it will cultivate in some people. This, a little bit of laziness, or a little bit of just like a different way of viewing art. And maybe it's not laziness, maybe it's just a different way. And it also creates this separation, I think, from, there will be people that will just, they'll resonate with that. They don't have any other, like, their visual vocabulary is like lower. They don't have any experience to understand, the difference between somebody. And I heard this term the other day when I walked into a shop, from a tattoo designer. They said it, photo bashing. So he was just bashing together photos, from the internet to make these designs. And so you have this like idea that some people are going to resonate with that. They don't have any like frame of reference to know that there's a difference. And then you have somebody that's going to look at this photo bashed eagle, and they're going to be like, no way, I want the Chris Garver eagle. You know what I mean? Like, I want somebody who understands from 30 plus years of drawing these things what that is. And I'm willing to go, through these steps and pay this money and have this experience in a different way. Dude, I think it comes with education. Again, why I love these types of podcasts. I love all the podcasts out there that are educating people on that, clients, educating other artists about that. Because the more that people are talking about the difference between, a artistically drawn, crafted tattoo design and a photo bashed design, the more people are going to lean towards that craft. And so, will we always have this over here, this photo bash thing going? More and more, I think it's going to become a standard. But if we keep talking about it, more and more people are going to go, oh, I want the craft thing. This is like, look, we have Starbucks and we have great craft coffee shops. You have people making homemade beer in their garage, and you have really high-end craft breweries. There's this separation. Some people will resonate with just, I want a cup of coffee from McDonald's. It's corporatized. It's like standardized. And then there's some people that said, no, I want that bean from El Salvador that's roasted this way, that, took 15, right. Me too. I love it. That took 15, years to create, or whatever it is. They understand the difference, and they will go and seek that out, So yes. I think it's about, communicating and keeping that in the sphere of, talking about it.
Yeah, those are good analogies to use, actually. And there's probably a million of those like that, but the craft beer one's a good one. Coffee's a good one. Again, art is subjective. Those are art forms in their own right as well,
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed. I support AI completely, to answer your question in a short form. But I'm just trying to figure out how to leverage it the best in my business practices, and
Me too.
how to utilize that vast pool of artificial intelligence to make us do smarter things in our day-to-day lives, and help us do smarter things. So I think it's great in that regard.
Yeah, work smarter, not harder, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what all the experts say.
That's right. That's what, and I can repeat it.
Yeah, it's one of those great quotes you were talking about.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Anybody out there, use that one on your tattoo cover page.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yo, tattoo artists, listen up. You're out here putting in work, creating incredible tattoos, and using the best supplies to make it happen. But let me ask you something. Why aren't you getting paid for the products you already use and love? That's exactly what the Electrum Insiders program is all about. Check it out. You can earn 10% commission on every sale you drive through your unique link. You can also save 20% on every order you place, or hook up your friends with the same discount. And you get paid when artists you refer grab Electrum ink, fire cartridges, Durmore, and other Electrum products. Think about it. You're already using Electrum products, you're already talking about what works, you're already tagging Electrum in your posts. So why not turn that into cash? No sign-up fees, no hoops to jump through, just an easy way to make extra money while saving on the supplies you already buy. And if you've got clients, followers, or artist friends who trust your recommendations, this is a no-brainer. You could be stacking passive income just by sharing what you'd be talking about anyway. So stop giving away free promo and start getting paid for what you already do. Sign up today. Just follow the link in the description or scan the QR code on your screen to learn more about Electrum Insiders, because it's time to turn your passion into profit. So how do you feel about that? I almost don't like talking about it anymore, but you've seen the black dot thing, right?
Yeah, dude, look, I was talking about this back in like 2012, 13. There was somebody, I don't know if it was Black Dot, but it was some article or something came out of Japan, I believe, about this. And so it's been this conversation has been being had for, a baker's dozen years. It's just got it's in the limelight now because the guy was on Shark Tank. But look, I'm not fearful of it in any stretch of the imagination. The first thing that comes to mind actually is, okay, I imagine this whole story plays out in my head where somebody's in a kiosk and their arm is strapped into this thing and the needle hits their skin. They throw up and pass out, fall over, break their arm, and because it's strapped in, and now somebody's getting sued. Black Dot's getting sued big time, So there's so many variables to this game that, it is tattooing, this business that is tattooing, this connection of tattooing, that I don't think a machine can account for those variables. So, will it potentially at some point be some experience that somebody wants? Yeah, for sure. And will there also be some artists that want to, input themselves into that experience, either by designing or, curating designs for it? Yeah, absolutely. But will it take over, tattooing as a mainstream thing? Highly doubtful, but maybe I'm just maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I have so many questions about that thing. I actually was going to try to get the guy on the podcast at some point.
It'd be fascinating. It'd be a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, oh God, I got so many questions. I'm like, I've talked about it on the podcast. The reason why I said I almost didn't want to talk about it is because I felt like I've talked about it a lot on the podcast with a few people now, and I'm just like, I don't want listeners to get bored and be like, how many times are you going to talk about the black dot thing? But
yeah,
it's super fascinating just because we're on the subject of AI and how that ties in. I think it's a good opportunity for artists to be able to, again, get your work out in front of multiple clients in multiple places at the same time. It's a great opportunity for if you're an artist, if you want to embrace that. But I'm like, man, how do you have $7 million invested in this thing, man? Like, that's a crazy amount of money.
That's a major amount of money, and I think to me it's almost like less AI. I don't know what aspects of large language models and AI are being played around with inside of Black Dot or this type of mechanism, but to me it's more like 3D printing, or it's a mechanical thing, potentially. I know that there are robots that can do certain surgeries and certain things like that. It's, to me, I align it more with that. And again, hey, spend your money. If that's what it's all about, go for it, but I don't know when that you hit the point of diminishing returns on trying to tackle all the variables that we deal with as tattooers on the daily basis, like to your point, when I listened to the podcast, you were talking about it, the bloodborne pathogens, the 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 blood and the skin and the sterilization and all of that. It's not just about being able to manipulate this needle across a path or across a 3D surface. That 3D surface is oozing with, plasma and blood, and, the needle is getting plugged up with skin and whatever, so how do you deal with all of those things? Who's doing the prep? Who's spraying it down and shaving that part of the skin? Yeah. I don't know. There's, again, to your point, man, Rob, I got tons of questions too. It's a fascinating conversation, but I don't think it's anything to be worried about.
No, I'm not worried about it, but I do think it's a good conversation to have in regards to, just ties right back into regulations and oversight and safety in the industry. And, it's a huge conversation to have around those types of things, because one thing I was talking about a couple weeks ago, tying back into the education part, was like, typically from my experience in like traditional apprenticeships, you're not learning things about like, you're learning a little bit about anatomy, but you're not really learning too much about different skin types or skin conditions, or you're not really talking about aging skin a whole lot. Most of the time you deal with those things as they happen, you know what I mean? And that can be a tragedy in some cases, like
I remember tattooing, like first few months of tattooing. I mean, this is so on point with what you're saying. Like, I remember the first time that I like watched a blowout happen that I did. And it was on like an 80, 70 something, 80-year-old woman. And she was getting a little Japanese, fan on her arm. And I just remember the line, like pulling the line and just seeing it go like blow out. And I was like, whoa, this is fascinating. And, I learned quickly right then, wisdom of experience. Okay, I need to be, and I'm asking questions afterwards, well, what happened? Like, why did that happen? What can I do? And this happened with, age of skin. This happened with different types of skin, to your point. Like, I tattooed in Vallejo, California. There's a large Filipino population, and they just had a different type of skin. Like, it was, almost across the board. Like, so a large, African American like population as well. And like learning what you had to do to create a impactful, visually appealing tattoo on, darker skin was something that I had to learn along the way. And, it's something that people should be thinking about. And to your point, it doesn't typically happen in your traditional apprenticeship unless you have a really, really forward thinking mentor, that's going to talk about that stuff.
Yeah, that was a good point that you made, because typically the darker the skin, the more sensitive the skin is.
Mm-hmm.
My experience, you get a lot more swelling and reaction on darker skin.
Could keloid, I mean, like, who, are you thinking about that? Like, are you asking those questions? Are you, do you even know to ask those questions before you hit somebody with with a 9 mag and their skin all of a sudden starts to, during the healing process, like keloid up? Like, it's something to be really, really intentional about, and again, like, over the course of time, this has been something most tattooers have learned, to your point, in the process of doing it. And tragically so sometimes,
because it often is just going to turn into an oh shit moment.
Yep.
Oh shit, what do I do now? Oh shit, let's take a smoke break.
Right. Yep. 100%. You trying to figure it out. And which again is why I like, we're talking about like these, this taboo term of tattoo school and tattoo education. And, there's the whole spectrum of that as well, right? You have from these really like low end, just in it for the money grab tattoo schools that are like pumping out people that don't really have the experience or the knowledge to be to really be in this industry, and creating impact in a positive way, right? And all the way to the other side of that coin is you have a guy like Alex DePasse who is in Europe and has, a tattoo university essentially, and it's a part of a real university, and it is, you have accredited courses, and it's very, very defined. It's very, very difficult. It is something that to get through, you have to put intention and effort into. And so everything in the middle is going to come with it. Again, I feel like, in tattooing around 2013, 2014, like there was such an explosion of accessibility, of product development, innovation, and people were like trying to like really, you know, set their foot and make their mark in those spaces. And that included education. And, I do think that there will be, and maybe it'll have to happen from a regulatory standpoint, a sort of settling of that. And time will tell.
Yeah, I kind of have a little bit of a crystal ball, I guess, because I'm very entrenched in the regulatory side with product development and compliance in that regard. So I am fortunate enough to be able to kind of see the direction things are headed. Obviously, I don't know. No one at this point really knows where things are going to land for the tattoo industry, but we do know for sure that there are very strong voices out there advocating for regulation and oversight of our industry. And I said it to Mikey, or even Joe Cap when we were having our conversation on the podcast. It's very disturbing to me that hair parlors have stronger requirements than the tattoo industry has. That's an alarming thing. And not alarming for me, it's alarming for me from an artist perspective to know that this is what the comparatives are when these politicians and lobbyists are up on their podiums in front of other people with a lot of power talking about these things. And they're saying things like, hey, the guy that cuts my hair has to have a license, but the guy that does my tattoo doesn't.
Right.
People are like, what? And so I think what Alex DePasse is doing is great because that's exactly what the industry needs. We need formalized education like that is actually constructed and led by industry pros and professionals, designed, led, and carried out by them. So if you want to be an artist, great. You sign up for a formalized education program in your state. You go through a proper mentorship, apprenticeship that's actually designed by key tattooers, and it's teaching you all the right things so that you're not having those oh shit moments. You're learning everything that you need to learn, not just tattooing, but also art theory and application, which is very critical. Like you said in the beginning of of our discussion, where he's like, if you're a better artist, you're going to be a better tattooer. So you have to learn those artistic fundamentals as well.
Yeah. And it was interesting to hear you talking about that, writing that article for Skin and Ink and the pushback that you got from that, from writing that and saying that exact thing that you just said. We have to have this as a way to, and I don't even know if this is the right word, but to gatekeep, because I don't believe in that. I want people to have opportunity, and I believe in opportunity, but it's an interesting, like, we didn't need to belabor the point of education, but like it's an interesting conversation. I think again, there's really the full spectrum happening in tattooing, and there will be a leveling, I suppose, at some point, just like with everything, and I think bottom line, it takes guys and gals in the industry advocating for a certain way of doing things, for a certain level of intentionality, to help that leveling land in the right spot.
Yeah, I don't like the term gatekeeping so much, and even when I wrote that article, so the way it happened was I submitted the article to the editor at Skin and Ink, and I didn't hear anything for a couple months. Usually, I never hear anything about my articles. He just usually publishes what I write. He's cool with it, whatever. And this time, I got a message, and he's like, "Man, I don't know if I can publish this article." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "I don't know, man. We just got a lot of pushback from a lot of really important people in the industry, and I just don't want to have a negative. I just don't want it to reflect negatively on the magazine." And he's like, "Just let me just think about it." And so then he just decided to reframe it a little bit, where it's like he put my thoughts on the matter out there, but then he also asked for the opinions and ideas of all of those people. Plus, then he also asked me to go out and get some opinions of artists that were also in support of a more robust education system. So it more or less turned into a conversation piece in the magazine. And I think it really shaped out well. And then after I read the reformatted version of it, I was like, well, I mean, we're really all kind of saying the same thing. Even the guys that were pushing back against, I mean, they were all saying the same thing, just different ways. And then I was like, so it's not really about gatekeeping. It's more about strengthening the gates, right? Just reaffirming the gates of entry and making sure that they're strong again. Because I feel like with social media, especially, man, I get super annoyed when I go on TikTok anymore, man. I mean, like, it fucking burns me up, dude, because I'm like, I go on TikTok and I see people tattooing with no gloves or buying these shitty kits off of Amazon with shitty fucking ink in them. And I'm like, this is exactly what I'm talking about right here. Like, this shit has to stop. Like, and so I don't know. It's a controversial topic. Yeah, we can't talk about that anymore because I think it's triggering the technology gods to keep shutting us down. So we need to move off of that.
Yeah. Let's move on. Next topic. Pretty exciting that I probably will be starting another podcast soon, which is pretty exciting. Going to try to innovate around something new in the way that I'm doing it. So stay tuned for that. And again, it's, kudos to you, man, and everybody else that's doing podcasts and using technology to get these stories out there, man. It's a challenge, as we've seen this morning, to deal with technology and to get this stuff out. So appreciate your patience and love what you're doing.
Yeah, no worries, man. Like I said, so we talked a lot about tattooing and what you got going on in tattooing. I wanted to ask you a little bit about you said you're involved in a Buddhist community, and I think that's really interesting too, because I also have a passion for Buddhism. Unfortunately, there's no Buddhist communities around me. I'm going to have to move somewhere else if I want to get really into that. But I do love it. And I don't really encounter too many people in the tattoo industry that are into Buddhism. So I'm really interested in hearing more about that part of your story and how you got into Buddhism and what your involvement is in it today.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I was Christian for many, many years of my life. And, at some point, those methods and that view on life just sort of broke down for me personally. And, I've been knowledgeable about some Buddhist imagery for many, many years. I mean, back where you get picture machine tattoo in San Francisco, back in '99, I came across a Buddhist Thangka book and was drawing the Buddha and drawing flames and some of these classic, images that we use in tattooing. And, again, I had methods and a view that was working for me at that time in Christianity. And, more recently in the last, 4 years, coming off of about a decade or plus, maybe a dozen years of meditating, like mindfulness meditation, just following one's breath, I was introduced to more like proper Buddhist concepts. And when I moved from California to Colorado, I got connected with a great Buddhist group out there called Diamond Way Buddhism. And our teacher, Lama Ole Nidal, has been producing Buddhism around the world for, 55 years. And, one of the most important things, a great teacher to me. And, one of the things that he says and how he talks about it, a couple of things that stood out. One, I love that Buddhism starts with personal responsibility, and it starts with your own critical thinking. The Buddha, as he was dying, said, nothing's left in a closed hand. I've given you everything that you need. And, but don't believe anything just because a Buddha said it. Be your own guiding light. Use your own critical thinking and make sure it matches with your experience. So I went into learning and using Buddhist methods with that idea. And, what my teacher Lama Ole says is highest truth should produce highest joy and highest level of functioning. And, so whatever that truth is for you, whether it's Christian or Buddhist or, whatever, is it producing highest joy and is it producing highest level of functioning? And for me, that's what this Buddhist view, Vajrayana Buddhist view does for me. It produces this highest level of functioning for me in my life. And I use Buddhist methods of meditation, both on the cushion and off the cushion, to help facilitate that. Another thing that he said is, life experience gives us power in meditation, and meditation gives us, power in life experience. And so it's like this cyclical thing. And, additionally, we use, methods of what they call the 6 liberating actions. And that is, how do I put these actions in my life into reality in a practical way? And that's with patience, with, generosity, with meaningful action, with diligent action, meditation, and wisdom. They all lead, those 5 top lead down to this, accumulation of wisdom. And so, man, it has been one of the most profound experiences for me to be connected with a group of like-minded people, to use these methods daily that really translate into my daily life, and produce this highest level of functioning and highest level of joy for me. So, man, I'm all in on it as I was exposed to it, and I continue to learn about it, and I continue to use it. It's just something that's been profound for me. And, one of the cool things that I also did, it took me a little while having a teacher is super important in the Buddhism that I practice, and being able to identify with that teacher and these methods is super critical. And so it took me a little while of figuring out, what is this the right place for me to be? And once I found that out, and once I learned about that, again, my Lama Ole, my teacher, says, when you find that place that is your highest truth, that produces the highest level of joy and highest level of functioning, dig in that one place. Because if you're digging in a bunch of places, what are you going to create? Just dust. So dig in that one place when you find it, whatever that is for you. And for me, it happens to be this style of Buddhism. And I love it, man. I love using it in my daily life. I love spending that time with, my community. I love getting away in retreat. I've also found a partner who is, aligned in that view. That we're all Buddhists. We all have this state of mind that we can attain. It's just veiled by our concepts and our disturbing emotions, and we just haven't meditated long enough to realize that we are Buddha. Buddha meaning a state of mind.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I love that. I mean, I've been interested in Buddhism for a really long time, and I've studied it here and there. Like I said, I don't have the immediate resources to be able to connect to that kind of community here, So unfortunately, it's all just a lot of. It's really hard to focus on those kinds of things if you're not around like-minded people often enough. So I think it's really cool that you have that community. It's a target focus of mine to get relocated out to Colorado at some point
Really?
in my life here. Yeah, I love Colorado, man. It's probably my favorite state in the United States. I go out there every year just to go hiking and just
Love it.
experience Colorado life and the culture out there. I love it. It's a great state.
Yeah, it's beautiful, man. I've really enjoyed it. I moved out there about 3 years ago. I have family out there, my brother and his family, and then my mom. They've all been out there, 20 plus years. I was a California guy after leaving Minnesota, the icy cold of the Midwest. I said, I got to go out and skateboard. I got to go surf. This is in my blood. And I've spent most of my life in California. And I love it, but Colorado's been really good to me. And you're right about I literally live blocks away from the Buddhist Center. I live with Buddhist friends, in a fourplex, and so it's having that what they call sangha, these friends on the way, on this path, is super critical. It's one of the things that we can take refuge in, and it is amazing to have, and then to have this greater community around the world that Lama Ole has built and produced and supported, is fascinating as well. I can literally go most places, most countries, and in the right city have a center that is going to look very similar to mine. The only difference is that they're going to be doing the meditation that we do in their own language. So if my wife and I go to Russia and Moscow, we're going to be doing the meditation on the 16th Karmapa in Russian. If we go to Latin America, it's going to be in Spanish. Anywhere around the Americas, North America, it's going to be in English, which really creates this opportunity for it to resonate with you on a deeper level. We certainly have parts of it, the mantras that are in Tibetan and that, retain this essence. But it's, been just like it went from India to Tibet. It is now, coming from Tibet to the West and being positioned in a way where the Western mind can really attain it and connect with it on a deeper level. So super great, man. I love it. I'd recommend, again, anybody who's searching for something, check it out. There's so many different, different levels that the Buddha taught on, and there's typically something for everyone there. And when you find that, if you got a ring and a hook, they're ringing the hook. If you connect with it, dig in that spot for a little while and see what happens. Does it produce that joy and functioning for you?
Yeah, it's such a. The reason why I think I like Buddhism more over any other way of thought. I don't really like to even call it a religion necessarily, because
right.
I don't really feel like Buddhism's a religion necessarily. It's just more a way of personal conduct, and I just think it's super simplistic in nature. You know what I mean? Where I feel like lots of other religions are super, super complicated and get way too into the weeds about really basic principles of life,
Yeah.
And I feel like that's where people get lost a lot. I know, especially I grew up Christian, also a Catholic, actually, to be precise with it. But man, I just the older I got, the less I gravitated towards that way of thought. You know what I mean? It just was really I didn't find it really serving purpose in my life the way I wanted it to. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And every Buddhist that I ever met was just seemed like they were always in such a happy state of mind, And I was like, man, how are how are they so calm and just like uh just they just seem to have it figured out. You know what I mean? And I'm just like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I
it's,
gotta
it's
learn more.
interesting to go through that process of like, this obviously from the Western perspective, there's this like very dualistic, good, bad, hot, cold, male, female. It's very dualistic in its thought process, and where Buddhism breaks that down and becomes not becomes non-dualistic. So there is wisdom and there is suffering in each experience. Can you view the experience from a perspective of wisdom? And this is where that personal responsibility comes into play. We all have created in this view. We've all created this experience for ourselves, leading up to this moment. And what do we have? We have the opportunity to respond with our body, our speech, and our mind to this experience to create the seeds of our future. And, again, you hear this saying like hindsight's 2020. I feel like Buddhism helps you sort of like narrow that like hindsight, right? Or bring that hindsight to immediate moment. I'm not enlightened, I'm not liberated. I'm working this path, but my idea is that if one is, everything in the moment you see the wisdom in, and you are functioning at a high level to benefit the most beings, the most experience that you can in that moment. So again, it's been really powerful for me, man. It's been I still, again, I'll advocate for anybody to use whatever methods they can find to create that highest level of functioning. Most of my family is still very Christian and it works for them. And I love that for them. If you're agnostic, I was agnostic for many years. If you're atheist, whatever it is, what is it creating in your life? And if it creates joy and functioning and connection, dig in that spot, get after it. And it just happens to be for me that these Buddhist methods and this way of viewing the way things are in this world works for me.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think that's another reason why I like the Buddhist teachings, because you just you just said, hey, whatever works for you is great. You know what I mean? If that's where your hook fits in, then that's great for you. You know what I mean? It's not. Whereas a lot of religions are more dualistic, like you said, where it's like, yeah, if you're not on this path, you're not on the right path, and I really hate that way of thought. You know what I mean? I really hate that exclusionary way of thought. You know what I mean? Because it shouldn't be like that. I think a simplistic approach is just that our design is to be better, better people by design, and in turn help other people become better people. And then that's what makes the world go round. So
and
I
that's
like that.
that's that altruistic attitude. Like on the Mahayana level of the Buddhist teachings, and then onto the Vajrayana level, it's like this bodhisattva, attitude of benefiting all beings. Like my purpose is to be here to benefit all beings, and I can use these tools of body, speech, and mind to do that. And I love that idea. I love it, man. It works really well for me, and the way of like viewing things as wisdom, I think we can take that into whether it's tattooing or whether it's other business or whether it's whatever experience we're having in our lives, we can look at what's happening in today, what's happening in this reality, and understand we have personal responsibility in it. And how do we view it? Do I view AI and Black Dot and tattoo schools and blah, 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 on and on and on as wisdom, as something I can learn from and grow from and, be a part of and benefit other people with? I do. So this is what I'm going to put out. I'm going to take that into my work with Tattoo Pro. I'm going to take that into my work with Force of Focus. I'm going to take that into my personal relationships that I'm building, in tattooing and outside of tattooing, and see if that rubs off on people.
Yeah, I love that. Are you involved with other tattoo artists that are also Buddhist? Is there like a community for that out there that you know of? Or
I don't know. I'm not. I know that I've heard a few other people talk about it. I think Mike Giant, I heard him on a podcast at one point talk about his Buddhist, belief. And so I know that there are other people, out there and that hold that same view. Listen, if you're hearing this and you are Buddhist, hit me up. Like, DM me. I'd love to connect with you, and man, Rob, when you're in Colorado next time, roll on through. We do public meditations Monday and Wednesdays, and it's an incredible time. We get together and chat before, and 25-minute meditation together. And then we chat afterwards as well. It's a great time.
Oh, dude, I'm totally down, because I'll tell you, I've gone to a couple retreats, like spiritual type retreats, and I always go into those feeling like I usually go to them because I'm looking for some clarity at stressful points in my life.
Sure.
Right? So I always usually go to those things where I'm just like feeling overwhelmed with life stuff. I'll go there for a few days, connect with like-minded people.
Yeah.
Man, I'll tell you, when I come out of there, it's like a complete reset and recharge, and it feels good,
Yeah.
Like your energy just feels good.
Yeah. And it's, one of the things that was like so impactful for me was, there was many years from when I sort of shifted away from, these Christian methods and this Christian view. And there was about a baker's dozen years of like searching and seeking and, trying different things out. And one thing that lacked for me all the time was when I would come away from a retreat, whether that was a meditation retreat, ayahuasca retreat, a plant medicine retreat, there was this like lack of ability for me to integrate these things, this experience that I had, into my daily life in some practical and really useful way. And that shifted when I, started practicing with Buddhist methods. And now I go to a retreat, and what I'm able to bring out of that is some very, very practical, really useful, like space from experience to control my reactions, to control my responses. Even today, like, look, man, I was stressed out about this internet connection, and I want to do a good job, and I want to be a good a good person on this podcast for you as the host. And I was stressing about it. My lady came in and she's like, hey, just remember, it's all perfect. It's all perfect, again, which is why I love having a partner who holds the same view. Because in those moments where I'm, stressing out about something, that person that holds the same view can come to me and say, hey, friendly reminder, there's wisdom in this. There's growth in this. And where does growth happen? Outside of our comfort zone. I was not comfortable with this internet problem, man. And, a great lesson for me, a great lesson for anybody that's in those moments. Like, I know there's somebody listening to this podcast right now that is stressed out, that is feeling some sort of suffering that I've felt, that you've felt, that we've all felt in this interconnected world that we live in. And just remember, whatever you're feeling, it's perfect. And you have the opportunity to respond to it in whatever way you choose most useful. And hopefully you have a little bit of space from that suffering to make a really useful response in your action.
Yeah, I love that, dude. That's great stuff. And you can make me go down a rabbit hole now because you started talking about ayahuasca, and now I'm like, oh shit, now I got more questions. So,
yeah, I mean, look, I went during that period of time where I was searching. It was a big part. Psychedelics were something that I leaned into as, hey, is this something that can be useful for me? Now, I'm happy that I had those experiences with ayahuasca, with mushrooms, with DMT, with LSD, with cannabis, with all of these things that I don't need anymore. That I'm happy I had that, and I don't have to dig around in those places anymore. I feel very confident and very collected about the things that I'm doing now, the methods that I'm using, my view, my meditation, and my action, these three pillars of Buddhist functioning and of life functioning, that I lean into. Happy that I had those experience, that wisdom of experience, but again, it lacked in some way for me of being able to take those experiences and apply the things that I was maybe learning into daily life, where that's not the case these days.
what did you find the benefit of psychedelics were for you when you were dabbing in that?
I think it got me out of some of my habitual thinking, created a little bit of a different frame of thinking, that can be useful in some sense. Even my Lama Ole, in the 60s, he went to, got married. His wife, Hannah, who passed in 2007, they went on their honeymoon to the East, to Nepal. And they were searching for, something meaningful, expanding their mind. And they were doing that through psychedelics and thought that was the way, and ultimately met these, high lamas and these really powerful, individuals that shared with them a different way, and created this situation where, they were going to stay there with them for the rest of their lives, they thought. And at a certain point, 3.5, 4 years later, 16th Karmapa, who was alive at that time, said, hey, they tried to give him their passports and said, we want to stay with you for even longer. And he said, no, gave them back and said, no, go tell your friends. They're going to be, this information that you guys learned is going to be useful for them. And that put them on a path of, again, 50 plus years of, producing Buddhism and sharing, these views around the world. That guy, amazing guy, he's in his 80s now and is pretty much stationary in Immenstadt, Germany. You can still go and see him, but he was in a new city every night, every day, around the world twice every year, connecting and sharing and producing this Buddhism. And I asked this question the other day, at a lecture, what does it mean to produce Buddhism? It means to take these views that we hold, to take this highest truth, right? That we're talking about for me, and to be in life, to be impacting the things that we're doing, this podcast, my work, my relationships, all of these things, to be impacting it with this view, with these actions. That is what it is to be producing Buddhism. And it's amazing. I love it. And we'll keep digging in this place,
Yeah.
for a long time, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'd love to stay in touch with you and dig more into that offline. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
super cool.
Happy to, man. Happy to. Anybody out
Yeah.
there, like if you, again, I can only speak from my experience. I can only share what's worked for me. But I can certainly do that. I mean, right now, if anybody's interested, you can go out and get Lama Ole's book, The Way Things Are. And it's, a book that he wrote that breaks down this Buddhist view and, some of the differences between, you know, that dualistic and non-dualistic view and puts it in a very like easy way for the Western mind to understand it. So yeah, check it out. It's something that's changed my life and I see it being impactful in many of my friends and people around me's lives as well.
I just wrote it down. I have a credit on Audible. I'm going to see if it's on Audible and I'll listen to it on my way to Hell City on Friday.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, man. So I also saw that you had some background in law enforcement. Is that true?
Yeah. About 8 years. So there was a time I finished up my business degree at St. Cloud State University. I'd been working at a tattoo shop out there with, again, rest in peace, Tom Generu, incredible artist, connected with Don Nolan and some of those guys. Did some of the most beautiful Western style, like Japanese body work, like full body suits he had produced, and was working for him throughout like getting my degree. Got my degree. I moved out to San Francisco area, Bay Area, was working at Picture Machine Tattoo, which was an absolute joy to see. I got there before they redid the shop and I got to see Pat Martinuke's like flash all over the walls. Got to go hang out with Guy, Martinuke up in Reno at Body Graphics and see some really cool stuff that he had. And I was working long hours, long days, had a growing family, not connecting the dots, on making enough money, commuting from Vallejo over to San Francisco. And it was tough. And I don't know how I had this connection about law enforcement. Nobody in my family's law enforcement. Like, I just like, I looked at it as like, okay, I like this idea of cat and mouse, cat and mouse. Like you're going to play your part of the game. I'm going to play my part of the game. We have certain resources that we can use. Like you're going to win sometimes. I'm going to win sometimes. Let's slap high fives and like go about our day. And so I looked for an agency that I could get into and get paid while I was going to through training. And that happened to be the Highway Patrol. So started with the California Highway Patrol, 2001, broke in Hayward, had full sleeves. It took them 5 years to implement a body art policy, which I still have framed on my wall back at home. Call it the Swanson policy. But yeah, worked there for about 3.5 years. Ended up, wanting to be a little bit closer to home. I was commuting down to Hayward and Oakland and from Vallejo still, and decided, all right, let me move to a local PD. And so I laterally transferred over to Vacaville Police Department, and shout out all my friends in blue. I built from a tattooer's perspective, I was tattooing the whole time, and I built a whole new clientele of people that had money. You want to tap into a really solid, here's a little golden nugget. You want to tap into a really solid clientele base, tattoo cops and firemen, because they have money and they're either going to spend it on their pool in the backyard, a boat, or a new car for their lady. Like they might as well spend it on some tattoos from you. So I had a great time doing it. But ultimately, I felt the pull of tattooing and, didn't feel super I was really good at that job, learned a lot about training. I was a field training officer, enhanced officer safety training instructor. So I got to have some cool experiences there, which again, I bring into the things that I do today in Force of Focus today, as a leader at Tattoo Pro. I bring in a lot of that experience into what I do. And it informed how I operate as not only a businessman, but a tattooer and as a person. And so, but ultimately, tattooing, the tug of tattooing got me, and I moved to Minnesota, took the family there, was working for a guy in Minnesota again. Great experience because I ended up getting fired from that shop for doing too many innovative things, having a website and starting a tattoo association in the town. And he was threatened by that stuff because it was tip of the spear. I interviewed, this was like, I love, man, thanks for asking this question because it brought me back to thinking like the first two interviews I ever did that ended up on the internet were with Clayton Patterson, who wasn't a tattooer, but an artist out of the Lower East Side of New York City. I don't even remember the technology I used to like record these conversations. And the second one of the coolest like conversations that I had that really fueled my fire later on, a few years later, to start the first tattoo podcast was an interview with Dave Gibson. And Dave, as many people do know, but if you don't know, look up Dave Gibson, just type in Dave Gibson Tattoo Flash, and you're going to be blown away. This guy was an incredible painter, an incredible lettering artist. And I interviewed him again, this old school guy that believed in me and telling his story and allowed me to record that and put it out to the world. And, rest in peace, Dave. Shout out to him. I worked with him a little bit later in my career, during a few guest spots at a shop in Dublin, California. And what an incredible opportunity to have that conversation. And, we had talked about one of the other things that got me fired was I had talked to Dave about possibly doing a lettering course and collaborating with him. And he was interested in it. Because he also knew that there were other things that one could do inside of tattooing that would put money in your pocket. We're limited to the amount of money we can make as tattooers because there's only a certain amount of hours in the day that you can have your butt in the seat and a client across from you. And so what are we thinking about and doing outside of that to generate other revenue streams? This is what I talk about in Force of Focus as well. Like, what's the expansion revenue opportunities of your business? As the CEO of your tattoo business, what are you doing to create expansion revenue at the end of that funnel? Many people are selling merch. Many people are, selling prints. Many people are now podcasting and monetizing that. I know when I podcasted, I had a great relationship with Kingpin Tattoo Supply, with Hustle Butter, with Inkies, with Sullen, with some of these other companies that believed in me and, provided me a, sponsorship opportunities, advertising budget, and, took the risk of putting their name and attaching it to something that was tip of the spear at that time. So yeah. I have eternal gratitude towards those guys, all of those individuals that believed in me and have mad love for them.
Yeah, that's crazy. I think that was a great, this is why I love doing this podcast, just because it's so interesting to hear, all the roads that people have traveled throughout their life. We get stuck in these boxes where we just think about tattooing, and it's just like everybody has lives outside of tattooing, yeah. And it's super interesting to hear your story. It's super cool to hear that. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. I love sharing it. Again, all of these different, many of my friends say, dude, how many lives have you lived, from tattooer to teacher to, cop to, revenue manager at a SaaS company to now head of growth at a SaaS company, plus tattooing, plus mentoring with Force of Focus. Like, I've lived a lot of experience, and I've taken that experience at this point, Rob, like I've had to take a real reductionary like idea about my life, like meaning I've ripped out everything that doesn't serve my purpose of getting to creating this life that I want. So all of my daily habits, the things that I'm in, serving with my time, in Force of Focus, Tattoo Pro, tattooing, you know, family, friends. This is like 5 things, like basically that gets my attention. Everything else, had to be ripped apart and taken out. And it was hard because there was a lot of those things that I had wrapped my identity up into. Even tattooing more often was a part of my identity that I had to like let go of so that I could create the most impact in my mind in the things that I was doing. How can I most impact and be beneficial to the most people in tattooing? And that wasn't necessarily tattooing all the time. So I still tattoo privately. I'm still, do guest spots when I come here to California. I'm still actively seeking out collaboration pieces, with high-end artists that I love to do, to create something unique. So all of these things like impact what I'm doing, but I would suggest that to anybody. This is something that we do in the Force of Focus is an audit and an edit. So you audit what you're doing in your life and you edit it down to the things that are going to create impact and get you to the place that you have decided that you want to be.
Yeah, that's cool to hear you say that because it was interesting. The other day I saw a post on one of the Facebook tattoo groups and it just said, "What are your thoughts on part-time tattooers?" You know what I mean? And it's just an interesting topic. And what's even more interesting is when you get into the comments and you start reading all the feedback from all the tattoo artists and what their opinions are on the subject, But all I could think when I read that is like, geez, I would have never been able to build what I've built in the tattoo space if I wasn't a part-time artist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I had to carve out a section of time in my schedule to be able to focus on building Electrum and the Electrum brand and bringing these products into the industry. And, even what I'm doing today, my business is it requires so much of my time.
Right.
To where it's impossible almost to be able to devote any time to even art now, you know what I mean? And I hate the fact that that's gotten away from me in life, you know what I mean? Like I really miss that part of things, and hopefully I'll be able to get back to that through some editing and what you just said.
Yeah, well, you know what they say, Rob. You can wish in one hand and shit in the other, and see which one fills up first. Like my opinion is, one has to be super intentional about our time. Mikey talked about it. I talk about it. This is what we walk people through. The way that I can do the things that I'm doing at a high level is that I'm very intentional about my time. I run my time. My time doesn't run me. And so, one of the things that I'm doing, it's a constant editing process. It's an auditing process, like, is putting, workout time on my calendar in more of an intentional way. And I love that you say that like art has also gotten away from you. I resonate with that because it has also been something that has gotten away from me as well. I'm having to be creative in other areas of business, and I miss spit shading. I miss creating a set of flash. Now I have a set of flash right down here in my backpack that was from 2019 that I'm working on and that I'm diving back into, but I have to be intentional about putting that on my calendar, about putting that on my day, and knowing that it's something that is going to enhance the other things that I'm doing. Because if it's not enhancing, it's not going to make it onto the calendar. So working out, 100%. Fitness is the gateway drug to personal development. I truly believe it, and that expands out to everything, including our art. And so, I'm excited. I'm excited to get back, pull some Higgins Black Magic across that Arches watercolor paper, and see that thing fade out. Oh, I love it. I remember when I unlocked that for myself, like by walking around a convention, and I talked to Seth Safari. I could still find it in my sketchbook, this little note: use Higgins Black Magic for your spit shading. And it was like back when you had to like dig into that. Now, I ultimately made a course on it. Like, you can go out, you can learn exactly how to like spit shade, tattoo flash and paint the way that I painted. But when I was learning, it was these little golden nuggets that, are still out there to find. Even with the accessibility of all this information on the internet. And I found one, and I remember it to this day, like just walking away from that experience, hearing him say that and being like, oh my God, I just unlocked something for myself. Like, there's still opportunity to do that for ourselves here in this life. And I hope everybody that hears this can feel a little bit of that, joy of unlocking some of those, those little nuggets. And again, it's why I continue to educate. It's why I continue to do the work that I'm doing, both, with Force of Focus for artists to help them elevate, and with my, with Tattoo Pro to consult and educate tattoo shop owners and managers and artists on how to best optimize what they're doing, unlock some of these little golden nuggets, that I've been able to gather over the course of my 28 years in this business and, my 51 years of life.
Yeah, I love it, man. I thank you for sharing all your stuff with us today. It's been super good getting to know you more. And I think this was a great episode, and we learned a lot, and there's a lot of takeaways from this. So I appreciate your time with me today. And again, no need to apologize for technical difficulties. I know this stuff happens a lot.
I appreciate it, man. I'm looking for the wisdom in it. And man, thank you so much again, Rob, for having me on. I really appreciate it. I love sharing my story. I love what you and many of these other people in tattooing are doing now with these podcasts. And, anybody else wants me on, just hit me up. If you just want to connect, again, you can find me at official Joe Swanson _FOF. Tattoo Pro is at Tattoo Pro Software on Instagram as well. I run that page. Just reach out. I love tattooing. It's given me so much in my life, and I'm doing my best to give back to it. And so thank you, man, for this opportunity. I appreciate you.
Yeah, man, I think you're doing a good job. And like I said, thanks again for spending time with me today, and looking forward to connecting with you more outside of this interview, and continue building a relationship with you. I think it's a lot of good things out of here. So
I love it, brother. Well, I'll hit you up with my phone number, and you can hit me up. And again, thank you so much, and appreciate everybody listening.
Yeah, man. Thank you. That's a wrap for this episode of The Business of Tattooing. I appreciate you tuning in and being part of this journey to level up the industry one conversation at a time. If you found value in today's episode, do me a favor. Subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another artist who could use this knowledge. Got questions or topics you want me to cover? Hit me up on Instagram at NoFlashNinja, or email me at rob@electrumsupply.com. And remember, tattooing is an art, but running a successful business is a skill. Keep pushing, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time on The Business of Tattooing.